Good morning and welcome to NICE. Today we are having the seventh session on Diplomats Conclave. And Diplomats Conclave is a special session where we invite diplomats who has been working in Nepal, serving in Nepal of different countries. At the same time, when we get some excellencies like the head of BIMSTEC or SARC in Kathmandu, we try to engage with them as well. We started this during COVID. At the time where we used to have no movement, we started an online platforms and then we received huge response on that. We're coming with a book on all the lectures of Diplomats Conclave. We are in the process of editing it and publishing it, where we have the lecture of 87 ambassadors who has worked in Nepal or worked in different countries around the world. So we're coming with that book very soon. Today, very lucky to have His Excellency Indra Mani Pandey, who is the Secretary General of BIMSTEC. He's in Nepal on his official visit, and when we come to know, we thought it's the best time to use that opportunity to bring him to NICE and have a conversation because BIMSTEC is important for us. It's one of the most important regional organizations. So what we thought is that rather than having a lecture on BIMSTEC because everyone knows about it, we thought to make it into a kind of conversation where we can bring important issues and then we can discuss few questions we can raise from the floor as well. Before I start, let me briefly introduce NICE. NICE is a research institute which we started in February 2016, and since then we have engaged with more than 100 institutions. Most of those are universities and think tanks. We also engage with government institutions like US Department of Energy. We also engage with different government think tanks of India like IDSA, Vivekanand Foundation. We have MOU with National Maritime Foundation, which is under Indian Navy. We have MOU with CAPS, which is under Indian Air Force. IDSA, which is under Ministry of Defense. CLAWS, which is under Ministry of under Indian Army, and several others. We have also had several engagements with other think tanks, which are under the universities and ministries of India. Apart from India, which is because India is a major neighbor, we engage more with India. We also focus on China. We have had a number of events, mostly before COVID, because after COVID there is less engagement. We had several events with Fudan universities and think tanks in China. Apart from India and China, we have major focus with US because US is a global power and the area that we focus is more of interest to them. At the moment, we are trying to concentrate ourselves on Japan and Australia. Recently, we had Indo-Pacific Future Forum, where we had almost 120 scholars working on Indo-Pacific around the region of Indo-Pacific, where we had MOU with number of institutions. So in coming days, we are going to strongly focus on Indo-Pacific region. People question when you say that at Nepal we are focusing on Indo-Pacific, what is the interest of Nepal in Indo-Pacific? Because Nepal is a landlocked country. We claim that Nepal is a virtual maritime country. We are not a landlocked country, we are virtually maritime because it's an open border with India. It's difficult to enter this venue. Maybe the security guard will stop you and ask you where you're going. But if you go to Indian Ocean, Kanyakumari, you might not be even bothered. You might, it's very easy. It's like traveling within the country. So since we're open border with India, in terms of security, our border ends at Indian Ocean. So that is what we claim that we are virtually maritime country. Second, through BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC provides access to Bay of Bengal region. So legally as well, we have access to Bay of Bengal region, which is in Indian Ocean. So legally also we have access to Indian Ocean. So that is second argument. And third, what we realize is that when there is, in recent times, we know that India and China are competing and there are some confrontations. So we see a reflection of Indo-Pacific competition. When India started engaging with US, China started to read it as challenging China. China started, oh, India want to engage with US to challenge us. So China said, okay, you will challenge me in the water, Indo-Pacific region, I'll challenge you in the Himalayas, where you have a strategic edge and interest and you are not well equipped because infrastructure in the Himalayas is not well equipped in the Indian side. So what we realize is that Indo-Pacific competition, the competition of water will be reflected in the Himalayas. Doklam was to challenge India, not to challenge Bhutan. So there is a clear indication that the competition in the water will be in the Himalayas, will be reflected in the Himalayas. So that is the third factor that we said, whether Nepal said, oh, I'm not a part of Indo-Pacific, I don't care what is happening in the region, Nepal will have to pay the price. Nepal will be part of those competitions. So that is why we started concentrating on Indo-Pacific region, which is our major focus, apart from China, neighborhood, and others. So in this context, we are happy to have His Excellency Indra Mani Pandey, who is a current diplomat of India, and he joined Indian Foreign Service in 1990. Before his current assignment, he served as permanent representative of India to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva. He had earlier served as Additional Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs in charge of Disarmament and International Security Affairs Division. During his 33 years long career as an Indian diplomat, Ambassador Pandey has served as Ambassador of India to Sultanate of Oman. Before his ambassadorial assignment in Muscat, he served as Deputy Ambassador of India to France and Consul General of India to Guangzhou, China. Ambassador Pandey has also served in various diplomatic capabilities at Indian mission in Cairo, Egypt, Damascus, Syria, Islamabad, Pakistan, Kabul, Afghanistan, and permanent mission of India to the Conference on Disarmament, Geneva, Switzerland. During his earlier stint at the Ministry of External Affairs of India in New Delhi, he has handled assignments in West Asia and North Africa Division, Consular, Passport and Visa Division, Counter-Terrorism Cell, American Division, and Bangladesh, Lanka, Maldives and Myanmar BSM Division. During his October 1998 to 1999, he attended Foreign Service Program at Oxford University in the UK, and in 2009 he attended the 49th annual course on National Security and Strategy conducted by National College of India. So Excellency, welcome to NICE. Before I start, let me raise a very common question which you can address. Like we all know that BIMSTEC connects South Asia and Southeast Asia. And we have realized that Southeast Asia is very important economically. It's not India has come with act east, look east. At the same time, the many countries in the neighborhood also see huge opportunities in Southeast Asia. So what role does BIMSTEC envision in bringing South Asia and South Asia for broader economic and cultural cooperation?
If you look at Bay of Bengal, you find that countries around the Bay of Bengal share common challenges, whether it's security challenges or sustainable development challenges. At the time when India and countries from South Asia were starting to look eastwards, developing the strong relationship with ASEAN countries, some of the ASEAN countries also started prioritizing their relationship towards their west, which was India and South Asia. In this context, the idea of BIMSTEC came into being when Prime Ministers of Thailand, Sri Lanka, India and Bangladesh came together in 1997 to start a small platform to focus on technical and economic cooperation. Later, of course, within 6 months, Myanmar joined, and that is when the acronym BIMSTEC came into being. So Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand economic cooperation. But when Nepal and Bhutan decided to join, I think we faced the challenge of how to rename this organization in case we had to do it alphabetically. So instead, a geographical construct was created, Bay of Bengal Initiative, for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation. I think the fact that this particular organization brings together countries in Southeast Asia and Southeast Asia gives it very unique character. I think the second unique character which BIMSTEC has is that it has remained focused on what we can call broadly technical and economic cooperation, which also has security dimension, but within security itself also, the focus has been on doing what countries can do together to address their security challenges. And then there is a vast agenda for economic cooperation. We have 15 sectors of economic cooperation within the ambit of BIMSTEC. So this uniqueness, one bridging South Asia and Southeast Asia together. Second, a non-political organization. That what gives BIMSTEC and as over any other regional organization in our part of the world. And we are focused on addressing our developmental challenges, working together. And rest of the issues I can address later. But one idea I would like to share with you that why regional cooperation is important. I think countries in a specific region or sub-region have a lot in common. It's easy to find convergences in their interests. It's easy to build consensus. And then once you take a decision, it's also easy to implement because you have a small number of players. And that is why organizations with a smaller number of players have done quite well in terms of forging cooperation in a specific sub-region or region. So BIMSTEC with only 7 member states is able to build consensus on a variety of issues, is able to move forward, and even implementation is not very difficult because we can easily build convergences in our interests.
Thank you, Excellency. Transportation, or you can say connectivity, energy and trade are the major need of the region, and that is why many countries like Nepal and Bangladesh, or you can say Bhutan, are part of it. So what initiatives are currently underway to deepen cooperation between BIMSTEC members in critical sectors such as trade, transportation and energy?
I think for us, all the 14, 15 sectors that we have identified, they are important sectors. And that is why I would like to, for sake of informing your audience, I would like to just list out the sectors that we cover. So we have this arrangement whereby member states are given lead in certain sectors. So they are designated as lead states. So let's start with Bangladesh. Bangladesh is the lead state for trade, investment, broad dimensions of development, and then blue economy, which has recently been added to the agenda of BIMSTEC. Then Bhutan is the lead state for environment and climate change, together with mountain economy, which is very important for countries like Nepal, Bhutan, India. We share that Himalayan space, and even Myanmar and Bangladesh. Then India has the security sector, which deals with basically traditional transnational security challenges like say drug trafficking, transnational crime, cyber security, human trafficking, challenges which countries in our region face. It also has some what we call non-traditional security challenges like maritime security. We are looking at cyber security. Even there was some discussions about looking at using space technologies to address some of the challenges. Then India also leads the energy sector, where I would later provide the details of what we have done. And it leads disaster management. Again, a very important area for regional cooperation in our region, as we all suffer from so many natural disasters. Then Myanmar deals with agriculture and food security, together with livestock and animal husbandry, fisheries. Then Nepal, the place where we are in, it has very important sector of people-to-people relations. So the subsectors are tourism, culture, people-to-people platforms like think tanks platforms. We are in the process of creating a platform for parliamentarians of our region. Then it also deals with visa matters. Then apart from people-to-people relations, it has important sector of poverty alleviation. So because we felt that poverty alleviation remains the major challenge for us. Then Sri Lanka has lead for science, technology and innovation, but it also has two other sectors, health and human resource development. And then finally Thailand, which has very important sector of connectivity. That's the point that you raised about what we are doing in connectivity. So let's start with connectivity. From the very beginning, it has been on the agenda of the member states. And after prolonged discussions, we agreed on a master plan for transport connectivity, which was approved by member states in 2018. I think that was the summit hosted by NEPAL in Kathmandu. In fact, that was the last in-person summit which BIMSTEC had held. Because the fifth summit was in Colombo, but that was a virtual summit. And the next one will be Bangkok, it will be held soon. And again, that would be an in-person summit. So the master plan includes about 257 projects. It covers all the dimensions of connectivity, so surface connectivity, maritime connectivity, air connectivity, and also capacity building dimensions for connectivity sector. We have made some progress. So in maritime connectivity domain, we have concluded an agreement on maritime transport cooperation. So that is an agreement which is likely to be signed at the next summit. Then we are also negotiating a motor vehicles agreement where a couple of rounds of deliberations have been held, and we hope that in future meetings we'll be able to reach consensus on that agreement. Together with ADB, we have also been trying to look at the financing aspect of transport connectivity project. So far the model has been that out of the projects identified for the connectivity, member states should do their own projects on their own. So if there is a project which, for example, is to link Nepal and India, so Nepal does its own part, India does its own part. Similarly, on the other borders too. That is the arrangement which member states have agreed on. But we are looking at financing dimensions together with ADB with the hope that we might get ADB interested in financing some of the transnational transport linkages that we are trying to build. They have already been working together with us in capacity building, in holding workshops on different aspects of connectivity. Then in energy sector, we have again an action plan agreed for energy cooperation. Member states from the beginning decided to focus on interconnecting the grids. So in 2019, a memorandum of understanding was signed by the member states. There have been prolonged discussions on the technical dimensions of connecting grids. Two aspects. One, when you connect the grids, you have to look at different sources of power feeding into the grid, and then you have to balance the supply and consumption part across the grids, because then power will be produced in one country and it will be consumed in some other country. So how do you manage that in order to maintain the supply of the power that countries would need that assurance? And then pricing mechanism across different countries. Once those technical discussions are concluded, I think we will be in a position to connect the grids. Already the grids of India and Nepal are connected. India and Bhutan are connected. Through India, there's a possibility of connecting Bangladesh has already been explored. So once we connect Myanmar and Thailand, And if we are able to have the technology to connect Sri Lanka's power grid through cables, undersea cables, then we'll have the dream of BIMSTEC grid realized actually. So we are quite close to that goal, but we have not yet reached there. And the third,
you just mentioned climate
trade.
change.
Trade. So in trade and investment, again, from the beginning, member states felt that it was very important sector. So even before Nepal and Bhutan had joined, we had concluded framework agreement for BIMSTEC FTA in 2004. And then 6 working groups were constituted and a trade negotiating committee to supervise the work of the 6 constituent groups. They were given the responsibility to negotiate agreement on trade in goods, then trade in services, then promotion of investment, of course trade facilitation, dispute settlement, and some other legal aspects. So together 6 working groups. We have made quite a lot of progress in these deliberations, but the momentum which was built up to 2018 got lost in 2019-20, and then COVID happened, and now we are trying to revive those talks, those negotiations. And within next 3 months, we are hopeful that 3 working groups would meet again and start their deliberations. There has not been focus in that sector on promoting investment. So this is something which I have been trying to bring to the information of member states, that there is an opportunity to work together also in promoting investments. Related sector of blue economy has just been added, but it's very important for countries around the Bay of Bengal. So we have an expert group constituted to prepare an action plan. In energy sector, just going back, we also have set up an energy center, BIMSTEC Energy Center, which will be responsible for providing technical support to the interconnected grids, including capacity building, assisting with technological dimensions of power transmission. So this will become like the secretariat for interconnected grids, the BIMSTEC Energy Center, apart from capacity building and also power conservation, those dimensions it will deal with. In environment and climate change, while we have action plan and some initiatives have been taken to implement them, one major progress I can cite is setting up a BIMSTEC Weather and Climate Center. So what this center has done, it has brought together meteorological departments of the 7 member states. And on a practical day-to-day basis, the meteorological departments work together on enabling one another and better forecasting. So with the utilization of some of the what we call supercomputing facilities available with Indian Meteorological Department, and with use of data provided by the member state, it's possible for the center to help member state in better forecast for the weather and other climate related issues. This center is fully functional. It has its own governing board, a scientific advisory committee, and it's one very shining example of what member states can do together when they decide to cooperate.
Excellency, you said that Nepal is responsible for people-to-people relation. I think this is one area which is very important for Nepal and the region. In this context, what can Nepal do in that context? Nepal shares a strong cultural and historical tie with almost all the member states, India or Sri Lanka or Bhutan or even to Thailand and others. So how does BIMSTEC plan to institutionalize cultural cooperation among its members, such as through cultural exchanges or joint festivals, education collaborations, or deepening people-to-people ties and promote mutual understanding. Like, for example, establishing Ramayana circuit, Buddhist circuit. I think these are areas which has huge potential, and Nepal has interest because Nepal has huge interest in developing Buddhist circuit. We are the birthplace of Lord Buddha, and then Sita is born here. So we are very interested in these kind of circuits. So what can Nepal do in that context, and where can BIMSTEC support in this initiative?
Thank you for raising this very important aspect of our regional cooperation. I think one of the things that bind us as countries around Bay of Bengal is our old civilizational and historical linkages, and the ease with which people are able to interact with one another, where you don't feel that you are in a country completely different culturally from the culture that you belong to. And it has been very important area of cooperation, but let me briefly touch upon very important role of Nepal. I think some of the progress that we have made during past 5 to 6 years is traced back to the summit which Nepal had hosted in 2018. That is when we started the idea of negotiating a charter, which was then adopted at the Colombo summit, and then it entered into force only last year. The rules of procedure for the BIMSTEC, again, we started initial discussions just after the Kathmandu summit, and now we have reached a stage where we have rules of procedure approved by our ministers, and it will be adopted at the summit. Similarly, this reorganization of the sectors of cooperation. So member states continue to identify different sectors at different point of time. So the need was felt that let's reorganize them in 7 groups so that 7 member states could be made responsible. And again, those deliberations started from Kathmandu summit, where the leaders agreed that they need to reorganize the sectors. The idea of having a meeting of home ministers of BIMSTEC countries is something which again was mandated by BIMSTEC's summit in Kathmandu. So Nepal has played a very important role in shaping the agenda of BIMSTEC. And that comes from the abiding commitment which Nepal has for regional cooperation. In all my interactions with the government of Nepal, this point has been repeatedly made, that Nepal very strongly supports the idea of regional cooperation. In culture, we have had some cultural exchanges, small BIMSTEC festivals, but we haven't made any major significant progress except creating a BIMSTEC Cultural Industries Commission and BIMSTEC Cultural Industries Observatory. That was something where Bhutan had taken the initial lead, and that's why these 2 institutions are located in Paro in Bhutan. We had initially a ministerial meeting of our culture ministers, and they gave the guidance of how we should move forward. Bangladesh has offered to host another meeting of culture ministers this year so that we can identify the way forward for our cultural exchanges. In tourism, we have made significant progress. So we have virtual tourism information center, a small tourism promotion fund. With ADB, we have been looking at promoting Buddhist circuit, because all the 7 countries share Buddhist faith and Buddhist heritage. So that's very binding factor. So you pointed out about Ramayana and other circuits that can be promoted. Again, if you look across our member state, it's a common factor which binds us: Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, Thailand, at least these four countries have very strong traditions of Hinduism still alive and practiced. So people would be interested in these circuits. I think there is no limit for cooperation in culture and tourism sector, but we need more focus on from member states, and that is why the ministerial meetings which are being scheduled this year and the summit which will be held in Bangkok, I think we'll see a renewed focus on cooperation in these two areas. We have also been discussing on facilitating travel of people through easing visa procedures. And just last year there was a meeting hosted here in Kathmandu of experts on visa matters, and there was a renewed commitment by member states to start exploring what they can do on their own to ease travel for people from other 6 member states. So there is a good beginning there, and if we can make progress, then truly the dream of travel within the region can be realized. Now we are a region of about 1.8 billion people. Our numbers is growing. So if we can promote intra-regional travel, then it will support our travel and tourism industries a lot. If you look at the arrivals in Nepal, the top 10 sources of tourists coming to Nepal, at least 4 are from the BIMSTEC member states. So, India, Sri Lanka, Thailand,
and
Bangladesh. So there is huge opportunity for promoting intra-regional travel, but also then branding the Bay of Bengal region as a destination for travel outside the region. So that also something which we need to look at and we can do. We have a network of tour operators, and that is where we are trying to explore the opportunities for creating circuits of travel involving more than 2 to 3 member states. So India, Nepal and Bhutan, or Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, or the other side, Sri Lanka also. We can, if we can create those circuits, I think we'll be able to promote our travel and tourism.
Excellency, in this whole process of integration, or you can say trade, economic growth, infrastructure is a major factor, and infrastructure gap remains a key obstacle in Nepal's economic growth or the whole regions. So how can BIMSTEC facilitate Nepal's access to regional infrastructure development projects, particularly through partnership on transport corridor, or you can say financial assistance and capacity building? Second is, how can BIMSTEC allow Nepal's access to port of India, Bangladesh and Myanmar to reduce logistics cost to Nepali goods?
I think the very important point you have raised about logistics actually, because logistics facilities impact on not only trade but also on travel and tourism. So when it comes to maritime transport, I mentioned to you that we have this agreement ready. That will facilitate cooperation among the member states when it comes to travel from port to port or one member state to other through the maritime domain. And it's very important for countries which are around Bay of Bengal, but also for countries like Bhutan and Nepal, because you are also, as you mentioned, a maritime state, except that you don't directly, you are not directly there. So we hope that with signing of this agreement, we'll be able to promote even things like cruise travel across member states, because Sri Lanka is very keen. Thailand is way ahead of other member states when it comes to tourism and including cruise tourism. So I think we can benefit from experience of Thailand and can promote it for other member states.
Before I open the floor to the audience, let me take one last question, like what role can think tanks like NICE play in fostering cooperation among BIMSTEC member countries, and contribute in realizing the objectives that BIMSTEC has? Does BIMSTEC play a role in bringing the think tanks of the member countries together, which can enhance the work?
So, think tanks do play a very important role. I think gone are the days when foreign policy used to be the domain of ministries of foreign affairs. People today are more actively involved in foreign policy making, if I may say so, because they actively follow global developments. They are concerned about how these global developments will impact on them. So today, foreign policy formulation, including approach towards regional cooperation, cannot be done in isolation. People are stakeholders in that process. And that is where the role of think tanks like NICE comes into play. Because you have very important responsibility of one, explaining to the people what the governments are trying to do, what their decision, how their decisions impact on people, negatively and positively, but also provide feedback to the government on what are the priorities and concerns of the people. Because at times government may not be able to fully sense the real priorities of the people, what they want to realize through the foreign policy, through external relations. Because domestic priorities of a country are priorities of the people, and its foreign policy cannot be divorced. Foreign policy is just a tool to fulfill national aspirations. It has to be a factor in fulfilling those goals, whether it's our national security goals or realization of sustainable development goals. So think tanks also have that responsibility to provide feedback. Now in context of BIMSTEC, I think there is another challenge where think tanks roles comes to be. BIMSTEC is not well known among the people. I mean, outside universities or think tanks, people are hardly aware of BIMSTEC, and it's not their fault if we have not explained to them what BIMSTEC is, what it is trying to do. If we have not reached out to them, to the students, to the community of research scholars, it's not their fault, it's our fault. So that is where think tanks can play a very important role. We do have a BIMSTEC network of think tanks. So from each member state we have one think tank which is part of that network. But I have repeatedly heard in all the member states this idea that we need to provide some other mechanisms for more think tanks to join. Because one single think tank from one member state cannot represent the entire think tank community of that member state. So this is something which member states need to look at. What are the ways in which we can bring in more think tanks from our member states on different platforms.